Hi, class. So for this painting that I was just talking about, my little introduction, I'm up here on our lake, and the thing that really intrigues me right now, I'm sort of looking around. I set things up. Sorry about the tripod. I set things up here, and I'm just gonna paint. I'm really interested in the reflection of the clouds on the water. I'm looking around. I did a drawing earlier this morning of a tree, and I'm kind of walking around. I walked out on the dock, and I just kind of looked around. That's kind of what I'm feeling like painting. I'm not thinking too hard about it, and that's something I just want to tell you. Don't think too hard about what you're painting. Just kind of respond to your environment with these paintings. Don't because again, the next assignment is 6 landscape paintings. Don't think about it too hard. I'd encourage you, like I said in the instructions, to try to paint more organic things. So paint trees, paint grass, paint the sky, paint clouds. You can introduce a few buildings here and there, but especially for these initial paintings, I think it's the thing I'm trying to teach you about the organic nature of watercolor is much more adaptable to natural forms, organic forms like trees and stuff. So I'm going to paint, but that doesn't limit you really. I mean, if you think about it, there's a whole ton of different stuff you can paint. So I'm looking at these reflections, and I'll show you. I'll take a picture of it to include in this. And I think I'm going to start with that. So one of the things that you need to understand about this next phase of our class is that you're going to start to try to incorporate all the concepts we've been exploring to this point. So you're going to incorporate dropping, lifting, edges, the way edges, when edges dry, when the water dries, it creates these nice edges and forms. What's the other stuff? Transparency, using washes to go over on top of other, underpainting. What else? Letting the paint dry and creating different patterns as the mineralization of the watercolor kind of settles into the paper. So all these kind of things, the dry brush technique, the wet into wet, all these you want to try to incorporate into your painting. And I'm going to try to demonstrate all those with this. I don't know, I'm just going to start working and I'll kind of naturally use those techniques. So you can maybe kind of observe them as I go along. So anyway, I'm going to paint clouds. At least start. And again, this will end up probably being kind of a long video, so my apologies for that. Hopefully it's not going to be too boring. I'm going to pause it for a minute while I get some stuff. Back in a second. Okay, I'm back. Let's see, am I running? Yeah. Oh crap! It's a whole new video. Anyway, I'll put these together in the thing. So anyway, one of the other things I want to emphasize is that you don't want to try to paint things. Okay, don't think of what you're painting as objects isolated from each other. The whole point of making a painting is to create a statement about the unity of these things, that you see the sky and the water and the trees and your hands all in the same thing, if that makes sense. A good painting expresses the continuous nature of form as one form moves into another and one form creates another form, and it's about the interrelationship of objects, ideas, and even cultural ideas, okay? So that's what painting's about. I know that sounds stupid or it sounds weird, but it really is. But for the sake of what you're doing right now, just think of painting as being without edges. You don't have like edges between things. You're trying to create a statement about the unity of things. And watercolor is perfect for that because it's almost impossible to control, so you might as well give up control, okay? So I'm going to start working here. I'm laying down water first in a kind of a pattern that suggests what I'm looking at, the shapes of the clouds reflected in the water. And there's an island out here. And I'm going to include the island in the painting. I think that'll look cool. So I'm just dropping clear water onto the paper. Now I'm using my fancy paper here, not your stuff. I apologize for that. But this is one I might want to keep, okay? I'm going to get a smaller brush now and start dropping. I've got some Payne's gray here, which is a really nice gray that will work well with this particular composition. I think I'm just going to start dropping in, the whole dropping thing. Now I think it's a wonderful idea that we make paintings. I'm making a painting of water with water. Do you think that's funny? Or is that sort of dumb? I think it's funny. Because the forces of nature that create what I'm looking at are what's going to create the painting itself. The clouds up in the sky that are reflected are water vapors. you know, all that kind of stuff. So I'm dropping. I'm also, notice how I'm using my brush too. I'm dragging it on its side across the paper to allow for the texture of the paper to kind of do its thing, like right there. See that? That looks awesome, I think, anyway, because it looks like light reflecting off the water. Remember, one of the #1 principles of watercolor painting is to let the paint and to let the water do the work for you. Don't force it. Brushes have long handles, so you hold them at the end. See that? I'm not going like this. This isn't a pencil. You hear the geese? See, I love that right there. See what's going on there with the water? The water is pulling the pigment into the paper like that in a really interesting way. That is not out there. I don't actually see that. But that expresses the nature of what I'm seeing. That's an important thing to understand. Isn't that marvelous sound? Wilbur's here with me. She's hanging out, listening to me prattle on. Okay, I'm going to stop this video for a while and work on the painting, and then I'll come back to it because it's getting too long. Okay? Later. Actually, I decided to come back because it was interesting. So here, I'll just force you to watch it. I've been told people kind of enjoy watching somebody paint. I could see where that might be interesting. I don't know. This paper down here is kind of dry. Actually, it's not kind of dry, it's super dry. So I'm going to just take my flat brush and put water, clear water into here. And I'm going to continue dropping with the smaller brush. Now, one of the sacred things about watercolor paper, about watercolor painting, is the white of the paper. You want to try to keep the white of the paper, and I haven't talked to you much about this yet, but you want to try to keep the white of the paper as open as possible for as long as you can. I've noticed in a lot of your paintings so far, you tend to go at the, just kind of wham, wham, wham. Try to be delicate with the surface, with your brush, with the paper. Let the paper be open, okay? Watercolor painting isn't opaque. Like if you've painted like with tempera paint or oil paint or acrylic paint in the past, those are all opaque processes. So they cover the paper and cover or the canvas or whatever you're working on. Cover they work layers up on one on top of another that are opaque. Watercolor, one of the reasons it's considered so unforgiving is that you can't work on, you can't change this. Once that dries, that's kind of, I can change it, I can make it darker, but I can't make it lighter. I know you've noticed this. See how that does that? I did that, we practiced this, but I used clear water and just dropped it into that darker area. And did you see how it pushed the pigment out? It's really beautiful. See that little, it's like this bloom of pigment. Now I'm looking at an island out there. Oh, I don't know, it's reflected in the water. It's kind of this dark green, but it's not like green, it's green with a whole bunch of, like, it's just toned down, so it's kind of more of a, but then there's all these yellow, I gotta start with the yellow first. When you're working on your landscape paintings, work from general to specific, okay? So don't paint like the leaves first or the grass. Think of basic shapes, basic forms, relationships between those things, okay? Okay, I'm gonna keep working on it, turn this off, keep working on it a bit, and I'll start it back up in a bit. Okay, so now I'm gonna start, it's like kind of halfway dry. I'm just gonna start lifting up some of the, that's totally gone, that thing I was digging before, but that's okay. I'm gonna start lifting up some of the pigment here to create kind of these soft, bright areas that I see in the water. So I'm taking the brush, lifting it up from the paper, squeegeeing it out, shaking it out. Where I can. A lot of it's dry by now. Okay. One of the things I habitually do as I paint, this is an important idea. So like I'm looking back at this tree line that's behind the island on the other side of the lake. And it's just this nice dark green. And of course it's made up of a zillion different greens, but I can't paint a zillion different greens. So I just kind of pick a middle, sort of a dark green to articulate that area with, like that. And when you mix your paint, or when you choose a color, like when I made this green by just grabbing a little bit of a dark green, and I threw some red in it to give it a little bit of dullness, just to change it up a bit. So kind of develop that habit of mixing a little bit of something into your paint, just kind of so you're not using it straight out of the tube. So here I'll show you. Here's this green right here, right there. That's the one I'm using. So I think it's like a, might be a phthalocyanine green. I don't know what it is. My palettes a mess, isn't it? And then I just grabbed a little bit of red, threw it in there a little bit more. And red's the complement of green, right? So it just kind of makes it darker and richer and just a little different. Just not green straight out of the tube. And that's how you actually start. You know, I was talking about how the trees back here are like a zillion different colors. So that's sort of how you start capturing that feel of a zillion different colors, is by randomly mixing color into one another, okay? Everybody always treats color like it's some kind of like stupid freaking science, and I just disagree with that. I think you have to just sort of be just kind of aggressive with your mixing and just sort of, and not think too hard about it, and develop a more intuitive understanding of how color and paint kind of work off each other, okay? I know that sounds goofy, maybe. I don't know, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it makes total sense. This is a little bit higher up here. I mean, you've learned about how complements work with each other, how a red kind of dulls a green or a green dulls a red, the color intensity. I mean, that's just sort of basic color, how color works. That's about it. That's my horizon's line. I always do that. See how crooked that is? That's kind of lame. Sorry. I'm going to try to fix that. So I'm going to go like this. There, that helped a little. I'm going to throw some other green, like some yellows into this green, because there's like yellow trees out there and stuff. Well, that wasn't too good. Okay, that's looking better. See how I kind of cheated there? I was like going, now it's a little bit, it's not like real good, but let me try something else here. Right down here. It's pretty dark there anyway. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, I'm gonna mess with the water a little bit more. I'm gonna use a different brush now though. I'm gonna use this bigger brush right here. Not my big flat or that small one. I just wanna throw some, because it's sort of halfway dry. Parts are dry, parts are wet. I want to just kind of throw, now the water's totally different. This sucks, but I'll have to just try to remember what I was looking at. I want just some like larger areas of color. I'm creating a little bit more contrast in the water to make it feel a little bit more reflective. Because you create reflections by contrast. Remember that. If you're painting something like metallic, you can't paint silver. You can buy silver paint, but that doesn't work. Don't bother it with silver or gold paint. Gold is basically yellow. Silver is basically gray. And you create the metallic look or the look of shininess through contrast. Strong light and dark contrast. I just drooled out of my mouth. I don't know why I drooled out of my mouth. I must like to paint. Did you see that drip of drool fall? I'm trying to make Wilbur laugh. Okay, you know, I'm gonna, like the water is the opposite of the sky, right? So I'm gonna throw the reflection of the sky. So in a painting, it's like the opposite. I'm gonna throw clouds. They're sort of like these in the sky here, but not exactly. See, I'm totally fine with, like I knew this was sort of like partially dry, and I'm totally fine letting the water sort of hit it, and it kind of does that, and that to me is beautiful. The helicopter. Okay, I'm gonna let this sit. I'm done with my demo. Go find some landscape and paint it. Don't be lazy. Don't sit around. Go outside. Paint. Okay, be a little lazy. But go outside and paint. Anyway, thanks for watching. This one isn't done. I gotta let it dry though, and I'll be doing some other stuff to it. So later.